Alexander Chen sat in his corner office on the 45th floor, staring at the city lights below. He was 32 years old, built a tech empire worth billions, and right now he felt more trapped than ever before in his life. 3 weeks ago, his grandmother had called him to her bedside. She was 91 and had been fighting cancer for 2 years. Everyone knew this was it. Her final days. When he walked into that hospital room, she grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "Promise me something," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp. "Promise me you'll get married within 3 months." Alexander felt his stomach drop. "Grandma, I already arranged everything," she interrupted. "Do you remember my best friend, Mrs. Lin? We grew up together in our village. She passed away 5 years ago, but before she died, we made a promise. Her daughter and my grandson. We wanted to see it happen." "You can't be serious," Alexander pulled his hand away. "This is the 21st century. People don't do arranged marriages anymore." His grandmother's face hardened. "Then you won't get your shares. Your cousin Vincent will get everything. The company your grandfather and I built, the one you've worked so hard for, it will all go to him." Vincent. Just hearing that name made Alexander's blood boil. His cousin was a snake in expensive suits, always lurking, always waiting for Alexander to fail. And now suddenly this made sense. The will, the conditions. His grandmother was forcing his hand. "Why are you doing this?" Alexander asked quietly. "Because I'm dying and I want to know you won't be alone." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Your grandfather and I had an arranged marriage. Everyone said we were crazy. But we built a beautiful life together. Sometimes the heart needs a little push." She died 2 days later, and Alexander found himself reading her will with the family lawyer, confirming what she'd told him. Marry within 3 months or lose everything. The girl's name was Sophia Lin, 28 years old. That was all he knew. His assistant David tried to find information about her. There wasn't much online. She worked at a small library in the old part of the city. No social media presence. No public photos except one blurry image from a library event where her face was mostly hidden behind a stack of books. "Maybe she's just private," David suggested, showing him the photo on his laptop. Alexander leaned back in his chair. "Or maybe there's a reason she's hiding." That evening, Vincent showed up at his office. His cousin walked in without knocking, all confidence and fake concern. "I heard about the will," Vincent said, sitting down without being invited. "Tough situation, man. Really tough." "I'll figure it out," Alexander replied, not looking up from his computer. "You know, I actually know someone who went to school with your bride-to-be." Vincent pulled out his phone. "Want to see some real pictures?" Alexander's fingers froze on his keyboard. He didn't want to care. But curiosity got the better of him. "Show me." Vincent swiped through several photos on his phone. They showed a woman from behind or from far away or with her face partially covered. Nothing clear, but Vincent's friends had plenty to say in the group chat messages visible on the screen. "Poor guy has to marry that. I heard she's really desperate for money. Someone said she has a terrible personality too. Really cold." Alexander felt his chest tighten. Vincent was practically glowing with satisfaction. "Look, I'm not trying to make this harder," Vincent said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "But you should know what you're getting into. This girl, she's apparently been struggling financially for years. Your grandmother's will is like winning the lottery for her." "Get out," Alexander said quietly. "I'm just looking out for you." "Cousin," I said, "get out." After Vincent left, Alexander sat in the dark office for hours. He felt betrayed. His grandmother had trapped him. This Sophia woman was probably counting down the days until she could get her hands on his money. And Vincent was probably celebrating, knowing Alexander would either refuse to marry and lose everything, or go through with it and be miserable. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent's poison kept spreading. People who claimed to know Sophia started appearing everywhere. A woman at a charity event told Alexander she'd worked with Sophia once and found her difficult and plain. A man at his gym mentioned he'd gone to college near Sophia's university and heard she was really unfortunate looking. Every piece of information felt designed to make him more resentful, and it was working. Alexander started having nightmares about the wedding, standing at the altar in front of hundreds of people, business partners, investors, competitors, all of them watching him marry someone who would make him a laughing stock. His best friend, James tried to talk sense into him one evening over drinks. Why don't you just meet her? James asked. Before the wedding. Just have coffee or something. What's the point? Alexander swirled his whiskey. I'm trapped either way. Meeting her won't change that. But maybe she's not what Vincent is saying. That guy is poison, Alex. You know he wants your company. Then he'll have to wait. I'm going through with the wedding. Alexander finished his drink. But I'm keeping this strictly business. Contract marriage. We'll live separate lives. After a year, we'll divorce quietly. I keep the company, she gets a settlement, everyone moves on. James shook his head. Your grandmother would be so disappointed. My grandmother should have trusted me to live my own life. The bitterness had settled deep in Alexander's chest. Every day closer to the wedding felt like marching toward his own execution. He threw himself into work, staying at the office until 2 or 3 in the morning. Anything to avoid thinking about what was coming. His lawyer drew up a prenuptial agreement that was basically a business contract. Separate bedrooms. Separate finances. No expectations of companionship. Divorce after 12 months with a modest settlement for Sophia. This is pretty cold, his lawyer commented, sliding the papers across the desk. Are you sure about this? Just make sure she signs it before the wedding. David, his assistant, seemed worried too. One morning he brought coffee to Alexander's office and hesitated at the door. Boss, can I say something? Make it quick. I actually went to the library where she works. Just to drop off some books? David shifted uncomfortably. I asked around about her. The people there really like her. They said she's kind. Volunteers a lot. Helps kids with reading programs. Alexander didn't look up from his computer. Vincent probably paid them to say nice things. Or you talk to people who don't know her well. I don't think, David, I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling this. The truth was, Alexander didn't want to hear anything good about Sophia. It was easier to be angry. Easier to blame her for this situation. If he thought she might actually be a decent person, then he'd have to face the fact that he was being cruel to someone who didn't deserve it. 2 days before the wedding, the prenup came back signed. Sophia hadn't changed a single word, hadn't asked for more money, hadn't negotiated. She just signed it and sent it back through her lawyer. She didn't even read it, Alexander muttered, staring at the papers. She just wants this done. But a small voice in the back of his mind whispered something different. What if she was just as trapped as he was? What if she didn't want this either? He pushed the thought away. It didn't matter now. The wedding was in 48 hours. The venue was booked. The guests were invited. The caterers were preparing food. His custom suit was hanging in his closet. Everything was moving forward like a train that couldn't be stopped. That night, Alexander barely slept. He kept thinking about his grandmother's face in the hospital. The way she'd looked at him with so much hope. She really believed she was doing the right thing. She really thought this would make him happy. The morning of the wedding arrived gray and cold. Alexander got dressed mechanically. The suit fit perfectly. His hair was styled. His shoes were polished. He looked like a groom from a magazine, but inside he felt hollow. In the car on the way to the venue, James sat beside him. Last chance to back out, James said quietly. And lose everything I've built? No. Money isn't everything, man. Alexander laughed bitterly. Says someone who has never been poor. My grandparents came to this country with nothing. They built that company from scratch. I've spent 10 years growing it into what it is today. I'm not handing it over to Vincent because my grandmother had outdated ideas about marriage. The venue was beautiful. His grandmother had planned every detail before she died. White flowers everywhere, soft music, elegant decorations. It should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a very expensive funeral. Alexander stood at the altar, his heart pounding. Guests filled the seats. He recognized business partners, investors, family members. Some looked curious. Others looked concerned. A few seemed amused, probably having heard the rumors Vincent had spread. The music changed. Everyone stood. Alexander's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and then he saw her, walking down the aisle in a simple white dress. Her face was covered by a veil. She moved slowly, gracefully. No father to walk her down the aisle. She was alone. Something twisted in Alexander's chest. Guilt, maybe. Or sympathy. This woman had lost her mother, too. She was probably feeling just as trapped as he was. But then he remembered Vincent's words, the rumors, the blurry photos, the warnings from supposed friends of hers. His jaw tightened. This was a business arrangement. Nothing more. Sophia reached the altar and stood across from him. He couldn't see her face through the veil. Couldn't read her expression. They were two strangers about to legally bind their lives together. The officiant began speaking. Alexander barely heard the words. His mind was racing with resentment and resignation. This wasn't how he'd imagined his wedding day when he was younger. He'd thought love would be involved, choice, partnership. Instead, here he was, fulfilling a dead woman's wish while his cousin probably sat in the audience grinning at his misery. "You may now lift the veil," the officiant said. This was it, the moment of truth. Alexander's hands trembled slightly as he reached up. Part of him didn't want to look. Didn't want to see the face of the woman he'd resented for weeks without even meeting. But he had to. Everyone was watching. He lifted the veil slowly, his eyes closed for just a moment longer. Then he opened them and looked at his bride's face for the first time, and his entire world turned upside down. Alexander couldn't breathe. His hands were still holding the veil, frozen in place. The woman standing in front of him was nothing like what he'd expected. Nothing at all. She was beautiful. Not in the flashy, over-the-top way he was used to seeing at business events. This was different, natural. Her dark hair was pulled back simply. Her face had minimal makeup, but her eyes, those deep brown eyes, held something that caught him completely off guard. Intelligence, sadness, and something else he couldn't quite name. But she wasn't looking at him the way a bride should look at her groom. She was staring at him with confusion, almost shock. Her lips parted slightly and he heard her whisper, so quiet that only he could hear. You're... She stopped herself, her cheeks flushing pink. Alexander's mind was racing. What did she mean? Of course he was Alexander Chen, who else would he be? But before he could ask, the officiant cleared his throat, pulling them back to the ceremony. The rest of the wedding passed in a blur. Alexander said his vows mechanically, still trying to process what he was seeing. Sophia's voice trembled when she spoke hers. Her hands were ice cold when he slipped the ring onto her finger. When the officiant said he could kiss the bride, Alexander hesitated. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, but hundreds of eyes were watching. So he leaned in and gave her the briefest, most formal kiss possible. Her lips barely touched his before he pulled away. The reception was torture. Alexander sat at the head table next to his new wife, maintaining a polite distance. Sophia barely touched her food. She smiled when people came to congratulate them, but the smile never reached her eyes. Vincent approached their table with a champagne glass in his hand and a smirk on his face. "Congratulations, cousin," he said, his tone mocking. "Your grandmother would be so proud. You actually went through with it." "Thank you, Vincent," Alexander replied coldly. "You can leave now." Vincent's eyes shifted to Sophia. "And you must be the lucky bride. Tell me, how does it feel to hit the jackpot?" Sophia's jaw tightened. For a moment, Alexander thought she might throw her water in Vincent's face, but instead she spoke with quiet dignity. "I don't know what you mean. I'm here to honor a promise my mother made to a dear friend. Money has nothing to do with it." Something in her voice made Alexander glance at her. She sounded sincere, almost hurt by the accusation. Vincent laughed and walked away, but Alexander's mind was spinning. After what felt like an eternity, the reception finally ended. Alexander and Sophia were driven to his penthouse apartment in uncomfortable silence. The driver kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror, probably expecting to see newlyweds holding hands or whispering to each other. Instead, they sat on opposite sides of the back seat, both staring out their respective windows. The penthouse took up the entire top floor of a luxury building downtown. Alexander had bought it 3 years ago when his company went public. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and enough space for 10 people. Tonight it felt suffocating. "Your room is down that hallway," Alexander said, pointing. His voice sounded harsh even to his own ears. "Second door on the left. Your things were delivered this afternoon." Sophia nodded slowly. "Thank you." She started to walk away, then paused. "Can I ask you something?" "What? Did you see photos of me? Before today?" The question caught him off guard. "A few, why? Were they clear? Could you see my face?" Alexander thought about the blurry images, the distant shots, the obscured angles. No, not really. Sophia nodded, something like understanding crossing her face. That makes sense now. She turned and walked to her room without another word, closing the door softly behind her. Alexander stood in the living room for a long time, staring at that closed door. What did she mean by that? He poured himself a drink and sat by the windows looking out at the city lights below. His phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. How's married life? Hope she's worth losing your dignity for. Alexander turned off his phone and threw it on the couch. He needed to think. The woman he'd married tonight was not the person Vincent had described. She wasn't desperate or cold. She didn't seem interested in his money. And she was definitely not unattractive. So what game was being played here? He pulled out his laptop and started digging deeper. This time he bypassed Vincent's sources and went straight to public records. Sophia Lynn, 28 years old, master's degree in business administration from a good university, graduated with honors, worked at the downtown library but also volunteered at 3 different charities. No criminal record, no debts, no scandals. This didn't match Vincent's narrative at all. Alexander kept searching. He found an old article from her university newspaper. She'd won an award for a business proposal about sustainable community development. The photo showed her accepting the award, smiling genuinely. She looked exactly like she had at the altar today. Why had Vincent lied to him? Or more importantly, who had been feeding Vincent those lies? Sleep didn't come easy that night. Alexander lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. His grandmother's insistence. The blurry photos. Vincent's convenient inside information. Sophia's confusion when she saw him. Around 2 in the morning, he heard sounds from the kitchen. Soft footsteps. The refrigerator opening. He got up and walked out, finding Sophia standing in the kitchen in a simple nightgown holding a glass of water. Sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I couldn't sleep either. They stood there awkwardly. The city lights coming through the windows cast everything in a blue glow. Sophia looked tired, sad. Nothing like a woman who had just secured a fortune by marrying a billionaire. Why did you agree to this? Alexander asked suddenly. The marriage. You could have said no. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. My mother died 5 years ago. Before she passed, she told me about a promise she made to her best friend. Your grandmother. They wanted their families connected. My mother said it would make her happy, wherever she was, to know I kept that promise. She looked down at her water glass. I thought I'd be marrying someone different, though. What do you mean? The photos I saw? She trailed off, looking embarrassed. Never mind. It doesn't matter now, but it did matter. Alexander stepped closer. What photos? Who showed them to you? A lawyer delivered them. He said they were from your grandmother's attorney. The man in the photos was much older, overweight. The lawyer said you'd had some health issues and that's why you weren't able to meet me before the wedding. She finally looked up at him. I thought I was doing a good deed, giving a lonely, sick man some companionship in his final years. Alexander felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. That's what you thought? That I was dying? Yes, and I was okay with that. I mean, I didn't want anyone to die, but I thought at least I could keep my mother's promise and help someone at the same time. Tears filled her eyes. Then I saw you at the altar and I realized someone had lied to both of us. The pieces were falling into place. Vincent. It had to be Vincent. He'd shown Alexander fake photos making Sophia look unattractive. He'd shown Sophia fake photos making Alexander look like a dying old man. All so they'd resent each other. All so the marriage would fail and Vincent could claim the inheritance. We've been played, Alexander said quietly. What do you mean? He told her everything. Vincent's involvement. The rumors he'd spread. The convenient witnesses who claimed to know Sophia. The way information had been controlled and manipulated. With each word, Sophia's face grew paler. But why? She asked. Why would he do this? Money, power. If I don't stay married for at least a year, everything goes to him. He was counting on us hating each other so much that we'd divorce immediately. Sophia set down her water glass with shaking hands. So what do we do? It was the first time she'd said we. Not you. Not me. We, like they were a team. We prove him wrong, Alexander said. We stay married. We make it work for at least a year. Then we can decide what happens next. A year. Sophia repeated softly. In this apartment, living like roommates. Unless you have a better idea. She looked around the massive penthouse with its cold, modern design. This is your space. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding. You're my wife. The word felt strange on his tongue. Look, I know this isn't what either of us wanted. But we're stuck with each other for now. We might as well try to make it bearable. Sophia nodded slowly. Okay, but I have some conditions. This surprised him. Conditions? I want to keep my job at the library. I'm not going to sit around this apartment all day doing nothing. And I don't want your money. I'll pay for my own things. That's ridiculous. You're living here rent-free. You should at least let me— No. Her voice was firm. I'm not here for your money. I never was. If we're going to do this, we do it as equals. You have your life, I have mine. Alexander found himself almost smiling. She had more pride than he'd expected. Fine, keep your job. Pay for your own things. But you'll need to come to some public events with me. Business dinners. Charity galas. We need to look like a real couple or Vincent will use it against us. I can do that. They shook hands on it like business partners sealing a deal. Her hand was still cold from holding the water glass, but her grip was firm. Over the next few days, they settled into a strange routine. Alexander left early for work. Sophia went to the library. They came home at different times. Sometimes they'd run into each other in the kitchen. They'd exchange polite greetings and go their separate ways. David, his assistant, noticed something was different about his boss. Alexander was distracted. He kept catching himself thinking about things Sophia had said or the way she'd looked standing in the kitchen that night. Boss, you okay? David asked one afternoon. You've been staring at that contract for 20 minutes without reading it. Alexander snapped back to attention. I'm fine. Just tired, but he wasn't fine. Something was bothering him. He'd started noticing little things about Sophia. How she always made coffee for both of them in the morning, even though they barely spoke. How she left the living room exactly as she found it. How she never complained about anything. One evening he came home early and found her on the balcony. She was reading a book, her hair loose around her shoulders. The sunset painted everything golden. She looked peaceful, beautiful. She must have sensed him watching because she turned. Hi, she said. You're home early. Meeting got canceled. He walked out onto the balcony. What are you reading? She showed him the cover. It was a business book. Advanced Investment Strategies. Light reading? He joked. I like to keep learning. My degree is in business, but I never got to use it much. Working at the library is great, but sometimes I miss the challenge. Alexander sat down in the chair next to her. Why didn't you pursue a career in business? My mom got sick right after I graduated. I needed flexible hours to take care of her. The library job was perfect for that. After she died, I guess I just stayed. It felt safe. That must have been hard. Taking care of her alone, it was, but I wouldn't have changed it. Those last 2 years with her were precious. Sophia closed her book. What about you? Did you always want to run your family's company? For the next hour they talked. Really talked. Not as strangers forced together, but as two people getting to know each other. Alexander told her about building the company, the pressure from his family, his complicated relationship with his grandmother. Sophia shared stories about her mother, her love of books, her dreams she'd put on hold. The sun set completely, and the city lights came on below them. Neither of them moved to go inside. Can I ask you something? Sophia said quietly. Do you regret it? Marrying me? Alexander thought about his answer carefully. A week ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But now I don't know yet, he admitted. Ask me again in a few months, she smiled. It was small but genuine. Fair enough. That night, for the first time since the wedding, Alexander felt something shift. Maybe this didn't have to be a prison sentence. Maybe, just maybe, his grandmother had known something he didn't, but he wasn't ready to admit that yet, not even to himself. In his office across town, Vincent stood at his window with a phone to his ear. Keep watching them, he said to whoever was on the other end. I want to know everything they do. Every word they say. If they start acting like a real couple, we need to know about it. He ended the call and smiled to himself. The game was far from over. Alexander might have figured out some of the deception, but Vincent had been planning this for years. He had more cards to play, and he would stop at nothing to get what he believed was rightfully his. 3 weeks into the marriage, Alexander found himself doing something he never thought he would. He was looking forward to coming home. It started small. Sophia would leave little notes on the kitchen counter. Made extra coffee. It's in the pot. Or there's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry. Simple things. Thoughtful things. The kind of things that made the massive, cold penthouse feel a little more like a home. Alexander started doing the same. He'd pick up her favorite tea from a shop near his office. He'd leave it on the counter with a note. Thought you might like this. He never stayed to see her reaction. But the next morning, there would always be a thank you note waiting for him. They were like two planets orbiting each other, close but never quite touching. Then everything changed on a Tuesday night. Alexander came home from work exhausted. A major deal was falling apart and he couldn't figure out why. He'd been working on this partnership for 6 months and suddenly, the other company was pulling out. No explanation. No warning. He walked into the penthouse and found Sophia at the dining table. Her laptop was open and papers were spread everywhere. She looked up, surprised. You're home early. Are you okay? You look stressed. Just work stuff. He loosened his tie and headed to the kitchen for water. Do you want to talk about it? Alexander paused. Did he? Usually he kept work problems to himself. Dealt with them alone, but something about the way Sophia asked, genuine concern in her voice, made him reconsider. It's this deal I've been working on. Technology partnership with a European company. We were days away from signing and they just backed out. No real reason given. Sophia closed her laptop. That's strange. Companies don't usually pull out that close to signing unless something serious happened. Exactly. But I can't figure out what. Can I see the contract? Maybe a fresh set of eyes would help. Alexander almost said no. This was confidential business information. But technically she was his wife. And she did have a business degree. What could it hurt? He brought his laptop to the table and pulled up the files. Sophia leaned in, reading carefully. Her finger traced the words on the screen as she absorbed the information. When did they first hesitate? She asked. About 2 weeks ago. They asked for more time to review some clauses. Which clauses? Alexander showed her. Sophia read them twice, then sat back with a thoughtful expression. These clauses are fine, she said. There's nothing here that would make them pull out unless... She leaned forward again. Do you have the original proposal? The one from 6 months ago? Alexander pulled it up. Sophia compared the two documents side by side. Her eyes narrowed. Look at this. In the original proposal, this section about profit sharing was different. Someone changed it. The new version heavily favors your company. Too heavily. It looks almost predatory. Alexander's blood ran cold. But I didn't change that. My team and I agreed on fair terms. Then someone on your team changed it without telling you. Sophia looked at him seriously. Who has access to these documents? My executive team. About 6 people, and Alexander's jaw clenched. Vincent. He's on the board. He has access to everything. They stared at each other as the realization hit. Vincent wasn't just trying to break up the marriage. He was actively sabotaging Alexander's business. If this deal falls through, how does it affect the company? Sophia asked. Badly. We'd lose credibility in the European market. Our stock would take a hit. The board would start questioning my leadership. Alexander ran his hands through his hair. They might even vote to replace me as CEO. And let me guess who would be first in line for that position. Vincent. Sophia was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she opened her laptop again. We need to contact the European company directly. Explain what happened. Show them the original proposal. They won't believe me. They'll think I'm making excuses. Then we find proof. There has to be a trail, emails, document histories, something that shows when and who made the changes. For the next 3 hours, they worked together. Sophia's business knowledge surprised Alexander. She knew exactly where to look, what questions to ask. She pulled up document histories, traced email chains, cross-referenced timestamps. Finally, they found it. An email from Vincent's personal assistant to the European company, sent 2 weeks ago. It contained the modified contract with a note saying these were Alexander's final terms. Take it or leave it. He made it look like you were being greedy and inflexible, Sophia said. He sabotaged your own deal. Alexander felt rage building in his chest. But beneath it was something else. Gratitude. Sophia had figured out in 3 hours what he couldn't solve in 2 weeks. Thank you, he said quietly. I wouldn't have found this without you. Sophia smiled. That's what partners do, right? Help each other, partners. The word hung in the air between them. Were they partners? They barely knew each other. But in this moment, working side by side, it felt like maybe they could be. The next morning, Alexander confronted Vincent at the office. He had all the evidence printed out and ready. What's this? Vincent asked, barely glancing at the papers. Proof that you sabotaged the European deal. I have the original emails, the document history, everything. Vincent's face didn't change. He leaned back in his chair, completely calm. And what are you going to do about it? Take it to the board? They'll just see a desperate CEO trying to blame someone else for his failures. The board will see evidence of corporate sabotage. By whom? My assistant sent those emails on her own. I had no idea. She was trying to be helpful, protecting the company's interests. Vincent smiled coldly. You can't prove I told her to do anything. Alexander realized Vincent had been careful. Very careful. There was no direct link back to him. I know it was you, Alexander said. And now I'll be watching. Every move you make. Watch all you want, cousin. But you're still trapped in a fake marriage with a woman you barely know. How long do you think you can keep that up? A year? The board is already talking, wondering why their CEO rushed into marriage with some nobody, wondering if you're stable enough to run the company. Alexander wanted to punch him, but he walked out instead. Violence would only play into Vincent's hands. That evening, Alexander came home to find Sophia cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the apartment. I thought we could eat together tonight, she said, looking nervous, to celebrate figuring out the Vincent problem. I mean, I know we didn't completely solve it, but at least you know what's happening now. Alexander's anger from the confrontation melted a little. You didn't have to do this, I wanted to. Besides, I like cooking. It relaxes me. They sat down to dinner together. Real dinner, not just passing each other in the kitchen. Sophia had made pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread. It was simple but delicious. This is amazing, Alexander said. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mom taught me. She said cooking for someone is a way of showing love. Sophia paused, realizing what she'd said. I mean, not that I just meant in general. I know what you meant. Alexander smiled. Thank you, really, for the dinner, for helping with Vincent, for everything. They talked through dinner about easier things, books, movies, childhood memories. Alexander learned that Sophia loved old films and rainy days. She learned that he played piano but hadn't touched one in years. After dinner, Sophia insisted on doing the dishes. Alexander found himself helping, drying while she washed. They worked in comfortable silence, something that would have seemed impossible a month ago. I have a business dinner on Friday, Alexander said. A charity gala. I was wondering if you'd come with me. Of course. We agreed I'd go to public events, I know. But I'm not asking because we agreed. I'm asking because I'd like you there. Sophia looked up at him, surprised. Oh, then yes. I'd like that too. The gala on Friday was one of the biggest social events of the year. Everyone who mattered in the business world would be there, including Vincent. Sophia spent hours getting ready. When she finally came out of her room, Alexander forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress. Her hair was styled in soft waves. She looked stunning. Is this okay? She asked uncertainly. I borrowed the dress from a friend. I know it's not as fancy as what other people will wear. You look perfect, Alexander said honestly. Really perfect, her cheeks turned pink. Thank you. You look nice too. Nice was an understatement. Alexander in a tuxedo was something else entirely. But Sophia didn't say that out loud. The gala was held in a historic hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestra, tables full of the city's elite. Alexander kept his hand on the small of Sophia's back as they entered, a protective gesture that felt natural. People stared. Alexander Chen, the billionaire CEO who never dated seriously, had suddenly gotten married. Everyone wanted to know who his wife was. Alexander, darling. A woman in a sparkling gold dress swooped over. This was Patricia Wu, one of the city's biggest investors. You must introduce me to your wife. Patricia, this is Sophia. Sophia. Patricia is one of our earliest investors. Patricia looked Sophia up and down, her expression calculating. Charming. Tell me, dear, how did you two meet? Our grandmothers were best friends, Sophia said smoothly. They always hoped we'd meet someday. How romantic. And what do you do? I work at the downtown library. Several nearby people overheard and exchanged glances. A librarian married to a billionaire? The gossip would spread like wildfire, but Sophia held her head high. She wasn't ashamed of her job. Alexander felt a surge of admiration for her. As the evening went on, Alexander watched Sophia charm everyone she met. She was genuine, asking real questions and listening to the answers. She didn't pretend to be something she wasn't. People responded to that authenticity. Then Vincent showed up. Well, the happy couple. He had a woman on his arm, a model Alexander recognized from magazines. "Sophia, you look different than the last time we met." "We've never met," Sophia said coldly, "haven't we?" "Oh, that's right. I just saw photos. So many photos." His smile was cruel. "Though I have to say, you photograph much worse than you look in person." "Funny how that works." Alexander stepped forward. "That's enough, Vincent. I'm just making conversation." Vincent sipped his champagne. "By the way, I heard the European deal fell through." "Such a shame. The board is meeting next week to discuss it. I'm sure they'll be very understanding. The board will hear the truth about what happened." "What truth? That you made a bad business decision? That you let personal matters distract you from work?" Vincent's eyes flicked to Sophia. "Happens to the best of us." Before Alexander could respond, Sophia spoke up. "I was reviewing the original contract for that deal. The profit-sharing structure was actually quite generous. Some might even say too generous. Almost like someone wanted to make the company look desperate." Her voice was calm but clear. "But then someone changed those terms without authorization. Made them predatory. That's corporate sabotage. There are laws against that." Vincent's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. And I think the board will be very interested to hear about it, especially when they see the evidence." People around them had stopped talking. They were listening to every word. Vincent's face turned red. "You should be careful making accusations you can't prove," he said quietly. "Both of you. Is that a threat?" Alexander asked. "It's advice. This world can be very unforgiving to people who don't belong in it." He looked at Sophia when he said it. Then he walked away with his date. Alexander turned to Sophia. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I think I just made an enemy." "You already had one." "We both did." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. But Alexander noticed that after the confrontation with Vincent, people seemed to treat him and Sophia differently. More respectfully, like they were a real team. On the drive home, Sophia was quiet. Alexander reached over and took her hand. She looked surprised but didn't pull away. "Thank you for standing up for me tonight," he said. "Thank you for standing beside me." When they got home, neither of them wanted to go to their separate rooms. They ended up on the couch talking until 2 in the morning. About Vincent. About the company. About their fears and hopes. At some point, Sophia fell asleep. Her head rested on Alexander's shoulder. He should wake her up, send her to her room, maintain the boundaries they'd established. But he didn't. He sat there, feeling her breathe, and realized something terrifying. He was starting to fall for his wife, and that was going to complicate everything. Alexander woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and Sophia still asleep on his shoulder. Morning light was streaming through the windows. He checked his watch. 6:30. They'd been on the couch for 4 hours. Carefully, he shifted to grab a blanket from the nearby chair and draped it over her. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Her face looked peaceful, young, vulnerable. Alexander felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was a business arrangement. A 1-year deal to keep his company and then move on with their separate lives. Feelings weren't part of the contract. But watching her sleep, seeing the way her hair fell across her face, remembering how she'd stood up to Vincent for him, Alexander knew he was in trouble. Deep trouble. He got up slowly, trying not to wake her, and went to his room to get ready for work. But his mind kept drifting back to the living room, to Sophia, to the way she'd fit perfectly against his shoulder. When he came out dressed for the office, she was awake. The blanket was wrapped around her shoulders, and she looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to fall asleep on you. That was completely inappropriate. It's fine. You were tired. Still, we have boundaries." "I shouldn't have, Sophia." He sat down across from her. "Stop apologizing. It was just sleep. Nothing happened. But something had happened. They both knew it. The air between them felt different. charged. "I should get ready for work," Sophia said, standing up. The blanket fell to the couch. "Thank you for the blanket." She hurried to her room before Alexander could respond. He sat there for a moment, then grabbed his briefcase and left for the office. He needed to focus on work, on Vincent's sabotage, on anything except the way his heart had jumped when Sophia smiled at him. At the office, David was waiting with bad news. "The board meeting got moved up," he said. "It's today, 3 o'clock. Today? Why?" Vincent called an emergency session. "He's using the failed European deal as evidence that you're not fit to lead." Alexander felt rage bubble up. Vincent was moving faster than expected. "Do we have all the evidence ready?" "The emails? The document histories?" "Yes, but boss, there's something else." David looked uncomfortable. "Vincent is claiming your marriage is affecting your judgment. He's saying you're distracted, making poor decisions because of personal issues." "That's ridiculous, is it though?" David asked carefully. "You've been different since the wedding. Leaving work early, taking calls from Sophia. People notice." Alexander's jaw clenched. "My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. I know that. But Vincent is spinning a story, and some board members are listening." The board meeting was brutal. Vincent had prepared well. He had charts showing the company's recent struggles, testimonies from executives about Alexander's distraction, reports about the failed European deal. "Alexander has always been dedicated to this company," Vincent said, his voice full of false concern. "But lately, he's been dealing with personal matters that have clearly affected his focus. His rushed marriage, his wife's involvement in company business. Sophia helped me uncover the sabotage," Alexander interjected. "Or did she? How convenient that your new wife, who has no experience in our industry, suddenly discovers evidence right when you need it." "Some might say that seems orchestrated," the board members murmured. Alexander felt his case slipping away. "The evidence is real," Alexander said firmly. "Someone modified that contract without authorization to make the deal fail. Someone who benefits from my removal as CEO." Vincent smiled. "Are you accusing me, cousin? Because that sounds like paranoia. Maybe stress from your personal life is making you see conspiracies where there are none." The vote was close. Too close. Alexander kept his position as CEO, but barely, and Vincent was named as interim co-CEO to help share the burden of leadership. It was exactly what Vincent wanted. A foot in the door. Alexander left the meeting furious. He drove home too fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When he got to the penthouse, he found Sophia in the kitchen making tea. "How did it go?" she asked, then saw his face. "That bad?" Vincent is now co-CEO. He has access to everything. Control over half the company decisions. Alexander threw his keys on the counter. "This is falling apart. We'll figure it out, will we?" He's always one step ahead. He manipulates everything. And now he's using our marriage against me. Saying you're a distraction. Sophia flinched like she'd been slapped. "Oh," Alexander immediately regretted his words. "I didn't mean it like that. No, you're right. I am a distraction. This whole situation is my fault. If I hadn't agreed to the marriage, if I'd just said no to my mother's promise, don't." Alexander moved closer to her. "This isn't your fault." Vincent would have found another way. "He's been planning this for years, but I made it easier for him." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "I should leave. We should end this now." "Let Vincent have what he wants." "Absolutely not. But your company will survive. But I need you to stay." The words came out stronger than Alexander intended. More honest. "Please." They stood there in the kitchen, inches apart. Sophia looked up at him with those deep brown eyes, and Alexander felt everything shift. This wasn't about the company anymore. This wasn't about Vincent or inheritance or business deals. This was about her. About them. "Why?" Sophia whispered. "Why do you need me to stay?" Before Alexander could answer, his phone rang. It was James, his best friend. "Alexander, turn on the news. Channel 7. Now." Alexander grabbed the remote and turned on the TV in the living room. Sophia followed him. The news anchor was mid-sentence. Scandal involving tech CEO Alexander Chen and his new wife, Sophia Lin. Sources close to the couple claim the marriage was arranged for financial reasons, with Chen desperate to meet the terms of his grandmother's will. Ms. Lin, a library worker with substantial debts, allegedly agreed to the arrangement in exchange for monetary compensation. Alexander's blood went cold. The screen showed photos of him and Sophia at the gala. Then older photos, doctored images, fake documents showing debts that didn't exist. "This is all lies," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "I don't have debts. I never asked for money, I know. It's Vincent. He's going public with his attack." The news continued. Questions are now being raised about Chen's judgment and fitness to lead his company. Board members have called for a full investigation. Alexander's phone started ringing non-stop. Board members, investors, press, everyone wanted answers. "I need to fix this," he said, already planning. "I'll hold a press conference. Explain everything." "No." Sophia grabbed his arm. "That's what he wants. He wants you panicked and defensive. It'll make you look guilty. Then what do we do?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then her face changed. Determination replaced the fear. "We prove it's real," she said. "Prove what's real? Our marriage. We show everyone that we're not some business arrangement. We show them that we're actually together." Alexander stared at her. "How do we do that?" "We start acting like a real couple, in public. We stop hiding in this apartment and pretending we're roommates. We show people that there's something genuine between us. But there isn't." Alexander stopped himself. That wasn't true anymore. There was something between them. He'd been trying to ignore it, but it was there. "Growing stronger every day, isn't there?" Sophia asked softly, reading his thoughts. Their eyes met. Alexander felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. He could step back, keep things professional, maintain the boundaries. Or he could jump, risk everything, admit what he was feeling. "I don't know what this is," he said honestly, "but you're right. It's something." Over the next week, they put Sophia's plan into action. They were photographed having coffee together, walking in the park holding hands. Alexander brought Sophia to his office and introduced her to his team, not as his contractual wife, but as his partner. The tabloids ate it up. "CEO in love." One headline read. "The real story behind Alexander Chen's marriage," said another. But Vincent wasn't done. He started spreading rumors about Sophia's past, claiming she'd had other relationships motivated by money, suggesting she'd trapped Alexander. One night, Sophia came home from the library in tears. Someone had left a note on her car. "Gold digger," it said in harsh red letters. Alexander found her in her room sitting on the bed staring at the note. He'd never seen her look so broken. "Hey," he said softly from the doorway. "Can I come in?" She nodded. Alexander sat beside her on the bed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I could handle this, but everyone thinks I'm just using you. Even people at the library are treating me differently. They don't know you. Neither do you." "Not really. We've been married 6 weeks and we're still basically strangers." Alexander took her hand. "Then let's change that. Ask me anything. I'll tell you the truth." Sophia looked up at him. "Anything?" "Anything. Okay, do you regret marrying me?" Alexander thought about his answer carefully. "No, I thought I would. I was so angry when my grandmother forced this, but now, no, I don't regret it. Even with everything that's happening." "The scandal?" "Vincent? Even with all of that." He squeezed her hand. "Your turn. Ask me something. Why are you really fighting so hard to keep this marriage? Is it just about the company?" "No." Alexander's heart was pounding. This was it. The moment of truth. "At first, yes. It was about the company and the inheritance. But now it's about you. I don't want you to leave because I think I'm falling for you." Sophia's breath caught. "What? I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But somewhere between the late-night conversations and the coffee notes and watching you stand up to Vincent, I started falling, and I can't stop it." Tears were streaming down Sophia's face now, but she was smiling. "I thought I was the only one. I thought I was crazy for feeling this way." "You're not crazy. I fell for you when you put that blanket over me," Sophia admitted. Such a small thing. But it was so gentle, so caring. "I realized you weren't the cold,"